morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to continue the complete history of the Pokemon trading card game by taking a little bit of a look at the black and white base set. Yeah, that's right. We've reached Generation 5. And when you consider that we're currently in Gen 8, the fact that we completely finished Gen 4 kind of puts us halfway. I mean, not really because we haven't finished Gen 8, but it kind of tracks. So black and white. This was, of course, the black and white base set, which means it is literally just called black and white. It was the start of the Gen 5 block, based obviously on the video games Black and White. And it was released in Japan on December the 17th, 2010. But we would have to wait till the following year, April the 25th, 2011 to be precise, till we got our hands on these beauties. And as you would probably expect here, we had a new card design. Now, one of the things that was really interesting in Black and White was that the video games only featured, until you beat the story, you only could catch new Gen 5 Pokemon in the games. It's one of my favourite things about Gen 5. And they carried that through here. All of the cards in the Black and White base set were Gen 5 Pokemon. Now, there was actually one exception. That was the secret rare Pikachu. We'll get there in a moment. Although it was a secret rare, so it's not in the set like that, if that makes any sense. But it does give us a nice comparison. We can look at this compared to a Pikachu from the Diamond and Pearl, or actually the Heart Gold Soul Silver era was the more recent one. And you can see, I'm not going to sit here and painstakingly point out every little change, but you can see by looking at these two cards side by side, roughly how the Pikachu look a little bit different. And of course, with a new block comes a new design of energy, but I'll be honest with you, the Heart Gold Soul Silver energy was the best energy we've ever seen. Anything after that was going to be a little bit of a letdown, and it's not that I dislike the black and white energy, it's that it's not the Heart Gold Soul Silver energy, and it was always going to be a letdown. Now, in terms of chase cards, it was a little bit weird. We didn't really have any kind of new mechanic or anything like that. We had full art cards. And even then, we only had two of them, Reshiram and Charizard. And even then, they were just full art reprints of the Reshiram and Charizard from the set. They were just reprints of cards in the set. Now, I believe this was actually the first time we'd had full art cards in the game, and that was cool and all. But there were no real chase cards outside of these. Like I say, in the Diamond and Pearl era, we had level X's. Then we moved into the Heart Gold Soul Silver era with Pokemon Primes and Legends. And here, nothing. Except for these full art cards. But like I say, there's no extra mechanic going on here. And they're not even new cards. They are literally just reprints of cards that are already in the set. I'm going to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. Fair bit of disappointment here. If you're a collector, Black and White was not the set for you. Now, Call of Legends that we looked at last week with all the shiny Pokemon, yes, but we went from possibly the coolest collector set ever to very much not the coolest collector set ever. Honestly, kind of probably the worst. There really was very little to get your teeth into. There was that aforementioned secret rare Pikachu as well, which is worth noting. You can't really see it very well. The scans are all from PTCGO. More on that in a second. But there was actually a little lightning bolt texture in the text of the card, which was very cool. It's a beautiful card in real life. And the Pikachu, like I said, all the other cards were Gen 5 Pokemon. This was a new card, but this was not a good set for chase cards at all, really, unfortunately. Now, one weird little thing which mattered a lot to me at the time, and in hindsight you probably won't care, but they changed the ordering of the set. Up till now, they had always sequenced a set with holos, non-holo rares, uncommons, commons, and down through. They changed it now to be in type order. So now it was basically grass Pokemon, and then you went from there, and they were in Pokedex order, which was a really big change at the time, because obviously we'd been doing our binders a different way, and then they brought this in, and we all had to swap how we did our binders, and okay, right, I know it seems silly in hindsight, but at the time, this was a really big deal. Speaking of which, this is when Pokemon Trading Card Game Online first launched. Yes, we are a decade almost into Pokemon Trading Card Game Online. And I know it's had its problems, and I know not everybody loves everything about it, and that is fine. But let's just say it looked different back in the day to how it looks now. And it really was, at the time, the idea that we could play online the full Pokemon Trading Card game was really cool and really weird. Now, the pre-release promo here was Darmanitan, and we also got ourselves a pre-release deck box. Though, as I mentioned in the previous video, these were, I think flimsy would be a euphemistic way of putting it. And these are actually hard to find pictures of online. I probably would be better off digging out a picture, well, digging out my own one and taking a picture of it, which I might do if I get 5 minutes. Otherwise, here's a low-quality picture off eBay. I'm sorry. Now, in terms of the most expensive cards in the set, you really are looking at the 2 full arts and the Pikachu. And you can usually pick these up for like $50 to $70. When I was doing my research for this video, I wasn't able to really find a huge distinction between these 3 cards. What I will say is, well, like I said a minute ago, this was not a set for collectors. Sorry about that. Now, what was weird here is that we brought in a whole bunch of rule changes, some of them little, one of which legitimately broke the game. So, what used to be called Poké Powers and Poké Bodies, Poké Powers being active and Poké Bodies being passive, had now been grouped together into one word, abilities, which is a word that, as I'm recording this in February 2021, is what we are still using. Some of you watching this in the future, and I do hope these videos last because, man, they take a long time to make. They might have changed the words again. Who knows? But they changed it to abilities at the time. Supporters and stadium cards became subsets of trainer cards, although kind of irrelevant given that there were no stadiums in this entire set. And one which was a really big deal at the time was supporter cards. Up until Black and White, you would play a supporter card and it would stay on the field next to your active Pokemon until the end of your turn. They changed it so you had to discard when you played it, and essentially for months judges would just walk around at tournaments discarding player supporters from in play because they shouldn't have been. And if you think about a card like Versus Seeker, this could be a pretty big deal because you can Versus Seeker to get it back if it's in your discard pile, but you can't Versus Seeker to get it back if it is in play because it's not in your discard pile. So you can't actually go and get it back. There are some cards for which this rule does actually make a pretty big deal. So there we go. But we also changed the turn 1 rules, and changing the turn 1 rules was absolutely huge. We took away the rule that prevented you from playing item cards etc. turn 1, and there were now basically no restrictions. You could attack turn 1, you could play whatever cards you wanted turn 1. It gave a phenomenal advantage to whoever went first in the game, and it allowed Sableye to, and I'm not exaggerating, actually break the game. Now, I have done a video all about this. I'll link it in the description. But the short version is that Sableye guaranteed that you went first. It guaranteed that you would start the game. And then it had an attack which could essentially KO a Pokemon with less HP remaining than it. And you could play a whole bunch of cards to whittle down your opponent's Pokemon, play a Seeker to get rid of one of their bench Pokemon, and then just win the game. Like, turn 1. And I mean literally win the game turn 1, as in you go first, and Sableye, remember, guaranteed that you went first, and your opponent never got a turn. At US Nationals, they actually did an emergency rotation, so they rotated to Heart Gold Soul Silver on pre-rotation. In the UK, we just ignored Black and White. So even though Black and White existed, we didn't have the rules, and we didn't use the cards at the National Championships, even though the legality rule said we should have done. There was no, well, there might have been somewhere, not that I'm aware of, a National Championships that used the Black and White rules with the Diamond and Pearl cards. There were some smaller tournaments, and let's just say that I won a couple of Battle Roads literally just using my Donphan deck with 4 Sableye to guarantee that I went first, because Donphan was a deck that could easily do 80 damage turn 1. To show you how ridiculous it could be, I once won a 3-round Battle Roads in 5 turns. 1 turn, don't game 1. 1 turn, don't game 2. And game 3 did take me a whopping 3 turns to finish the game. 5 turns to win a 3-round tournament. That's how dumb the rules got. So, like I say, emergency mid-season rotation. When I say it broke the game, I mean in a very literal sense of the word. It actually broke the game. Now, with it being a base set, we are back to having 3 theme decks, as is standard, 1 for each of the first partner Pokemon. So we had Green Tornado, the Superior deck, which was a Grass Psychic theme deck. And this would get you a Holo Superior, which is a Cracked Ice Special Holo, which is exclusive to the deck, and a non-holo Superior, which is also exclusive. It was just a regular holo in the set. You will notice, by the way, looking at the front of the box, they have already stopped putting booster packs in theme decks. I told you it didn't last for very long. We then got non-holo rares of Sawsbuck, Musharna, and Scolipede, all of which were just non-holos in the set. Worth pointing out, there was a green coin, because, you know, grass-type theme deck, featuring the 3 first partner Pokemon from the set. Blue Assault was the Samurott theme deck that had a Cracked Ice Holo and a non-holo Samurott, both of which were exclusive. It was a regular holo in the set. And then you would get non-holo versions of Swanna, Galvantula, and Unpheasant, all of which were just regular reprints from the set. And then a blue coin featuring the first partner Pokemon, because, you know, water theme deck. And then Red Frenzy, which, you know, it's the Emboar one, love me some Emboar. That got you a Cracked Ice and non-holo version of Emboar, both of which exclusive to the deck. It was a regular holo in the set. And then there were non-holo rares of Darmanitan, Stoutland, and Chinchino. And Chinchino was one of the best cards in the set. We will get there in a moment. And then again, you got yourself the red coin because, you know, Fire-type first starter Pokemon. Now, this might have been a base set, but it brought in a whole bunch of really good cards. And Worlds 2011, which was the Worlds right after this released, was full of these black and white cards. But we need to start off with Emboar, not the theme deck Emboar, the other Emboar, because it had the ridiculous ability Inferno Fandango that said as often as you like during your turn, you could attach a fire energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. And David Cohen took this, paired it with Magnezone Prime, and won the World Championships. Because Magnezone, remembers, got the draw engine. You draw till you got 6 cards in your hand. Incidentally, if you're ever trying to play multiple stage 2s, the rule essentially is one of them needs to have a draw engine. Remember, we'd rotated the Diamond and Pearl cards out, so there's no Claydol here, and there's no Uxie. Our draw engine at this stage is really just relying on Cleffa and E-King. So, yeah. If you're going to play multiple stage 2s, one of them is going to have a draw engine. And then it had the ability, of course, that just let you, or the attack, that let you lost zone as much energy as you liked on the field, and then do 50 damage for each one lost zoned. So, of course, you would just pepper fire energy onto the field and go nuts. Emboar also saw a bunch of play with Reshiram, more on that in just a second, and it really was a great engine for any fire deck. We loved it. Now, Reshiram was a very nice card indeed. Reshiram had an outrage attack, which did 20 damage plus 10 more for each damage counter on it, and there really weren't that many Pokemon around at the moment that could get a one-hit KO on Reshiram, making it very powerful. But you also had free energy, 120 damage, discarding 2 energy from it. You'll notice you are just short of KOing a Reshiram, or Zekrom. We'll get to Zekrom in a moment. But remember that I told you plus power was very, very prevalent at the time. So plus power would make sure you did in fact get the KO. Otherwise, well, it would be a little bit frustrating, ladies and gentlemen, now wouldn't it? And although this worked with Emboar, the better combination and the one that was all over Worlds 2011, it did get a top 4 finish. Tom Dolezal, if I remember correctly, did play Typhlosion, because Typhlosion, although it was still a stage 2, it could accelerate an energy every turn, and you didn't need the energy in your hand, it went from your discard, but also it put a damage counter on when you did it, which helped to fuel your outrage attack, which was pretty gosh darn nice. Now, Reuniclus was one of these ones that we all looked at initially and thought, it's a stage 2 with 90 HP, which is atrocious, and it's got a terrible attack, and it's a stage 2, this doesn't look like a great card. But it had the ability, damage swap. As often as you like during your turn, you may move one damage counter from one of your Pokemon to another of your Pokemon. And Ross Cawthorn did actually take second at Worlds 2011. Strong argument in an untimed best of 3 he would have won Worlds, but it wasn't untimed. With a really weird deck, which basically revolved around using Reuniclus to move damage to big Pokemon that could handle the damage, and then playing a Blissey Prime to heal all of those Pokemon. So you would essentially take a huge amount of damage, and if your opponent couldn't one-hit KO, they would never get a KO. It was a very powerful card indeed. Now, I mentioned Reshiram, I should mention Zekrom here. Zekrom was a great card as well. It was very much the counterpart to Reshiram. It had the outrage attack just like Reshiram had, and for free energy it did 120, but it also did 40 to itself, which made it kind of vulnerable, but also powered up its outrage attack. And you would use here the combination of the Pachirisu from Call of Legends and the Shaman from Unleashed, and essentially Pachirisu would get extra energy on the field, Shaman would move it to Zekrom, and you could legitimately, and remember, no restrictions on your turn 1 goings on, you could do whatever you liked, you could legitimately go first, turn 1 with Zekrom, do 120. My good friend Tommy Roberts, he went to a tournament once, and I think it's something like a 7 or 8 round tournament, he donked 5 people. There were people who did that, who would literally rock up to tournaments and make top cut, just getting turn 1 wins over and over again. It ran out of steam pretty quickly, but if you could donk enough, oh, you would win. Zoroark was an amazing card that I played a lot of, because for just 2 energy, bearing in mind at the time we had double colorless energy, copied one of the defending Pokemon's attacks. So, for instance, you could go up against a Reshiram and do 120 with Blue Flare. And the rule with Reshiram was a really fun one, because Reshiram had to discard 2 fire energy after you attacked. So the ruling with Zoroark was that you would do 120, and then you had to discard, oh wait, you don't have 2 fire energy on you, you're good to go, ladies and gentlemen. The attacks that made you discard energy, you would have to lose your double colorless, but because Reshiram specified fire energy, you actually wouldn't have to discard it, and that would be ridiculous. So it was a great counter to Reshiram and a great counter to Zekrom, who were 2 of the very best Pokemon at the time. It also counted a whole bunch of stuff as we went through. Really fun to note that it was a black and white era, and it started off with probably the 2 best decks focused around Reshiram and Zekrom. I adore that. That makes me very happy indeed. Speaking of Stage 1 Pokemon that attack for a double colorless energy, Chinchino was another one that I played a lot of. Do the Wave for 2 energy, did 20 damage for each of your bench Pokemon. Fill up your bench, do 100 damage. But again, you're talking fast, consistent, low energy, just run through your opponent. I made a Stage 1 deck in 2011 that I am convinced I could have had a decent run with at Worlds, but I didn't go to Worlds in 2011, and our Nationals didn't have the black and white cards, so I guess we'll never know if I was lying or not. Karl Sukovic did get second at US Nationals with a Stage 1 deck. We'll talk about that one in just a moment. Now, Klinklang was a very fun Pokemon, but it was a little bit ahead of its time. Klinklang let you move all of your metal energy around the field as often as you liked. When we got the Plasma Klinklang that gave you immunity from Pokemon EXs, they came in a few sets time, and we had Max Potion that let you just heal off all the damage, but you had to discard your energy. So you would move the energy to a different Pokemon with Klinklang, max potion, and then move it back. We got to a stage where John Roberts actually went and won US Nationals with Klinklang, but in the black and white base set, we weren't ready. You needed the other Klinklang, we needed EXs, we needed max potion, but it was a card that would become very good in the future. Bouffalont saw a whole bunch of play being teched into a whole bunch of decks. For just a double colourless energy, you did 90 damage if any of your Pokemon were KO'd by damage from an opponent's attack during their last turn. So if you had a Pokemon KO'd, this was often a way to get a cheeky KO on a basic Pokemon, or with a basic Pokemon, sometimes on as well, for just one energy attachment. It popped into a whole bunch of decks. Now, Unpheasant was kind of a weird one. For 2 colourless energy, it had Fly, 50 damage, and flip a coin. If tails, nothing. But if heads, you gained immunity the following turn. But even though it was a stage 2, you would end up using this with Mew Prime, who, remember, could copy the attacks of any of your Pokemon in the Lost Zone. So the fact that it was a stage 2 ended up not mattering, and we had the Victini that would come in a couple of sets time, which would essentially allow you to reflip and have a 75% chance of heads rather than 50, and all of a sudden these Mew Toolbox decks legitimately did start playing Unpheasant. And a very quick shout out to Superior. It was decent healing. Let you heal 10 from each of your Pokemon during your turn. It's one of those that it popped up in a few decks here and there. But it was, shall we say, not a powerhouse card. But it popped up a little bit. In terms of trainer cards, there were a bunch of really good reprints, but the only good new card we got was Professor Juniper. Now, when I say the only good new card was Professor Juniper, that's kind of all we needed. Discard your hand, draw 7 cards. It was a supporter-type reprint of the Professor Oak that we actually got back in the base set. Although remember, back in the base set, you're talking about trainer cards, and there was no restrictions, there was no such thing as supporters back then, so you could use that as much as you liked. This was a once per turn supporter, and to be honest, it's been reprinted with different names a few times. It exists, as I record this, as Professor's Research, and we're just about to go full circle, because in Shining Fates, we are actually going to see the release of Professor's Research Juniper, which is exactly the same card as Juniper, albeit with a different name, but with the artwork of Juniper. Yeah, we've had brief periods without it since then, but it's basically brought the card in and it never went away again. Well, not really, never for more than a few months at a time. And this has been probably the best supporter card over that period of time. But we had to wait from the base set till now to actually get it back. Now, in terms of top decks, I have mentioned a few of these, but let's look a little bit closer at them. Emboar Magnezone really was an absolutely excellent deck. Going into Worlds, in the run-up to Worlds in 2011, there was a big discussion about whether this was too clunky and never going to work, or whether it ended up being the best deck around. And the weird thing is, it didn't end up being the best deck around. A whole bunch of people ended up finding it a little bit clunky, and it didn't dominate Worlds, but it did end up taking first place at Worlds, so it was not quite as good as we thought, and then it won Worlds. I'll let you figure that one out. Obviously, the fact that you had to Lost Zone so much energy with Magnezone did mean you'd need other attackers. Reshiram was a really nice one here, and it also did play that Rayquaza Deoxys Legend I mentioned before, because the Pokeball Space Virus lets you take an extra prize if you take a KO, and then 4 energy, 150, discard all fire energy. Well, that was fine, because you're already playing lightning energy for Magnezone, but you're mostly playing fire, so you would attach fire, 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 lightning, and then do 150, and then just reattach the fire with Emboar. Although you could put 2 lightning on there and only discard 2 energy, if that's what you're into. This was really the kind of Pokemon you would use as generally a one big swing late in the game, but you can see here, this is just a deck where you've got big attackers and you smash. And it won Worlds, so it must have been at least a little bit good. Now, Reshiram Typhlosion was probably the de facto best deck back in 2011. There were a bunch of people that did make top 8 with it. Jaywitz, he's quite famous. He made, I think, 5th place that year with the deck. Tom Dolezal made top 4 with the deck, although the deck did not make its way to the final. And essentially, it was a very straightforward deck. You had Reshiram. You accelerated energy with Typhlosion. You used Cleffa to set up. That was pretty much the entire deck. We did play the Ninetales with Roast Reveal to discard Fire Energy and draw cards, bearing in mind you needed the Fire Energy in the discard to accelerate it with Typhlosion, but it really was accelerate with Typhlosion, smash with Reshiram, draw with Ninetales, set up with Cleffa. And that was pretty much the entire deck. And it was great. Now, ZPS, Zekrom, Pachirisu, Shaman, this was a weird kind of deck because, like I say, this never actually really ended up being a hugely powerful deck. It did get a little bit better when it turned into ZPST, but that's a story for a later video. It was good, but it was very, very much a glass cannon kind of deck. Most of the time, you would either win really quickly, or you would take an early lead, completely run out of steam, and lose fairly convincingly. That was basically how it went. Now, Edward Kwang, sorry for the pronunciation, did actually win Canadian Nationals in 2011 with this deck, and it was a really fun deck, but it did really rely on the whole donking potential thing. It never ended up being quite as good as we might have hoped. That's not to say it's a bad deck, but, you know, really the only other main attacker we would see here would be like the odd Bouffalant for a bit of revenging. And you would play double colorless energy, so you could outrage with Zekrom, so you didn't need to use Pachirisu Shaman every turn. But it was a little bit weird. One fun little trick that we could use here was, now the card Defender saw very, very little play. Very little play. But it did see play in this deck. Defender said that any damage done to the defending Pokemon by attacks is reduced by 20. But it didn't say your opponent's attacks, it said attacks. So you would actually use Defender to stop Zekrom damaging itself, or at least damaging itself as much, which was really kind of fun. And of course it would double because it would also last until the end of your opponent's next turn, so it would also reduce damage that they did to you as well. Now, the Truth was a super awkward deck. This is the absolutely preposterously ridiculous deck that Ross Cawthorn took to second place at Worlds, and it was a kind of deck, it ended up winning a whole bunch of games, because by the time you realised what Ross was doing, you've lost. And it was an awkward deck. Now, it used the Vileplume from Undaunted to train a lock, what would now be called item lock, your opponent. So that would slow them right down, and you'd build your deck so you could work under item lock. And then your attackers were basically Donphan and Zekrom. Now, Donphan would be the one you would actually generally attack with here, and then Zekrom would be there as well for a bit of outraging. And of course, they both had very high HP. And then you would use Reuniclus to move damage off of your active onto your bench, Donphan, Zekrom, whatever, and when there was enough damage built up, you would make sure there was no damage on the Pokemon with energy, and you would then play Blissey to heal all of your Pokemon completely. And if you couldn't get one-hit KOs, and as mentioned, a lot of decks at the time couldn't, you couldn't beat this deck. Now, Pichu became super important for the deck, because it let you search for all your basic Pokemon and put them on your bench, bearing in mind this was a deck where you needed Vileplume, you needed Reuniclus, you needed Blissey, etc. It was a really awkward deck. But this helped you get set up, and then you would go to sleep and be invulnerable if you remained asleep, which could buy you turns to set up, which was nice. And it did even play Suicune Entei Legend, because for free energy, you could either do 80 damage plus burn, or you could take 2 energy off and put them into your hand and then do 100 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, really taking out their biggest threat. It was fun. Now, it did use Twins, which was really important here because you would definitely be going down on prizes in the early game. Twins let you grab any 2 cards if you were behind, and I cannot overstate how difficult this deck is to play or how awkward it is to set up. You needed all the help you could get. And that's where Tropical Beach came in. You see, this was one of the weirdest things about the entire deck. And that is the fact that Tropical Beach, now this was a promo card. Every year you go to Worlds, if you've got an invite, you get the Players Pack, and in the Players Pack, you get a promo card in 7 languages. English, Japanese, and 5 other European languages. And they're legal, but they've always been terrible. But in 2011... it was Tropical Beach, this lovely stadium card that let you draw until you had 7 cards in your hand and then ended your turn. Yeah, Ross actually played it in his deck. And most people hadn't really looked too hard at the stadium. People were having to kind of read it as the game went along. Although, to be honest, Ross's deck, before you knew about this, at Worlds 2011... the idea that you'd be able to just sit down opposite Ross and figure out this deck in the first couple of minutes was ludicrous. It was a super awkward deck, and it actually played Tropical Beach, and that was super, super weird. And then the final deck was Stage 1. Now, there were a few you could go for here. Donphan, my boy. Yanmega, the one that does... attacks aren't great, but if you've got the same number of cards in the hand as your opponent, you attack for free. And remember, as previously mentioned, we had both Judge... both players shuffle their hand into their deck and draw 4 cards. And Copycat, you shuffle your hand into your deck and draw cards equal to your opponent's. So, you know, you had 2 different options there for matching hand size. The Zoroark I mentioned earlier that would copy one of your opponent's attacks. The Chinchino, which would just do 100 damage, and the Bouffalont for revenge. And you've got Chinchino, Bouffalont, and Zoroark that all attack for a double colorless energy. Yanmega that attacks for free, and then Donphan that attacks for fighting energy. So your energy line makes itself 4 double colorless, and as much fighting as you can get away with playing. And you hit a lot of different weaknesses here, and you're very efficient, and you're a fast deck, and you're consistent. And like I say, Kyle Sukovic, Puka, he went and got 2nd place at US Nationals this year, or in 2011, playing this Stage 1 style deck. I thought I was really clever because I was playing my own version of this back home. Shall we say I don't think that Kyle and myself were the only people that came up with this style of deck. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Black and White was a base set, and we always have a bit more to talk about when we've got base sets. These are generally really important sets with a lot going on, but I think that is everything you need to know about Black and White. So now it's over to you guys, and it is the usual thing. Let me know what you thought. If you were playing at the time, I want your memories. If you weren't playing at the time, I want your thoughts now that you've had a little bit of a look during this video. Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.